Let's go back to the Google story and an antitrust expert, really the antitrust expert in technology, Gary Reback with Carr Ferrell. Gary joins us from Stanford University. Now, Reback is the Mac Daddy of antitrust. In the 90s, he pulled together a coalition of Silicon Valley companies to fight Microsoft, leading to a momentous antitrust trial, he said, in the finding that Microsoft was indeed a monopoly. And now, Gary, the Department of Justice is tying Google's hands behind its back with this ITA deal. Is that enough?
Oh, Cory, I don't think it's tying Google's hands behind its back. It has imposed some conditions that you talked about, and those are good conditions, and they help Kayak and Expedia and Orbitz, and that helps consumers. But we expected a lot more. We expected the Department of Justice to keep Google from manipulating search results, especially in travel, and they whiffed on that.
Yeah, talk about that. I mean, I was asking an earlier guest at Kayak about algorithms, sort of, and getting the Justice Department to understand that. Talk about how those algorithms could actually make Google the winner and let them do, bad things.
Well, what's going on now is that when Google goes into an area of specialized search, say product comparison shopping or local search, they have one algorithm for everybody else in the world, and then they stick their own results up or near the top. So they have one algorithm for everybody else and a separate algorithm that puts them at the top. The concern here is that after acquiring ITA and going into travel, they're going to do exactly the same thing with travel, so that Orbitz or Travelocity or Expedia will have the better results, the results consumers want, but Google will stick its own results up at the top of searches.
But Gary, doesn't the fact that the regulators now have the ability to monitor Google searches, doesn't that open the door for a broader investigation? I would think that you would be pretty happy about that.
I don't see them having any greater ability to monitor now than they did before, Emily. They've always had the ability to start an investigation and look at Google's search technology and search practices. In this particular situation, they have the ability to monitor additionally Google's non-discriminatory practices in terms of its competitors in travel. But this really doesn't help more broadly. It helps in travel, but it doesn't help more broadly.
What should Google be worried about most right now? Should it be worried about U.S. regulators, or should it be worried about what's going on in Europe?
Oh, I think it should be worried about Europe by far, Emily. Just this morning, Bloomberg Europe reported on a speech that the head antitrust enforcer in Europe made, in which he said that they had already received 500 responses to the questionnaires they sent out about Google's practices, and that he expected even more complaints about Google's practices. And he also said that he was going to make sure his agency assured that Google couldn't put up barriers against its rivals. We've never heard that from any of our antitrust enforcers in the United States.
Gary, we had Craig Barrett on the show earlier this week. Maybe that's my shameless plug, because people go on the website and see that terrific interview that Emily conducted. But he was talking about the differences between European antitrust rules and U.S. antitrust rules. Of course, antitrust, the whole concept starts in the U.S. But how does Europe differ typically?
I think the only real way Europe differs, Cory, is that it's just easier to explain. In Europe, the rule is that if you are a dominant company, meaning you have over 50% market share, you can't use that dominance to distort competition in any other market. So Google has more than 50% share in general search. It can't use that dominance to preference its results in product search or in local search or in travel search. It's pretty clean cut. Here in the United States, it's a little bit more complicated. We require a higher market share, and we ask the basic question whether Google is engaging in these practices in order to preserve its monopoly in search. More or less the same answers, a little bit more convoluted procedure.
Gary, Google's answer to this is always, well, competition is just one click away. I mean, is that a fair counter argument here? It's true.
Well, it's true in a sense for some things, Emily. That was always Microsoft's answer as well. But if you check the Microsoft complaint from last week, what you see is that Google is doing everything possible to make sure you can't get good competition one click away. They're keeping Microsoft from being able to access YouTube, for example. They have exclusive deals to keep Microsoft from being able to show particular content. So while you may be able to get competition one click away, that competition is not going to be good enough because Google's done some things to stop it.
All right, Gary Reback at Stanford University right now. So glad you could join us today. You're the expert on this subject. You're the right guy for us to have today, so thanks.